My planning now is I feel like I have to be more organized and I have to think ahead. For me to feel comfortable, I feel like I need to be one whole unit ahead of my fastest moving student. So for me, for the system to work, that's what needs to happen. So what that means is I have to have all my assessments created for that unit ahead of time, and all of the rubrics that I'm going to use and any other materials have to be prepared, copies made, because in a standards-based system, kids need to have access to everything when they need it. And so if you don't have copies made, if you don't have assessments ready, then the system fails. So it really means being more organized.
So one thing that's changed in my planning is I have to readjust my scope and sequence a lot more frequently, because where I plan to be by the end of the year, we already are. And so now I have to say, okay, what's the next step? What do they need next? So that's the long-term planning. And then instead of planning for a week, I might plan out for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. What's my main emphasis for this time? And I'm trying to do more big studies, things that kids would need to know in kindergarten and first and second, and they'll build on each other. For example, like, what does good writing sound like? I mean, you need to hear about that in kindergarten and first and second and third, and they'll just get deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's easy to tier. You know, I could talk about it on several levels in one mini lesson, so that the kids that are, maybe they're a little less far behind, they're a little less ahead, then they'll get what they need, and then the kids that are kind of in the middle will get what they need, and the kids that are really soaring will also get something out of every single lesson that I do. So I'm tiering my lessons a lot more so that everyone's getting really good information so that they can move on to their next step no matter where they are in the class.
Grouping and goal setting kind of run hand in hand. They really do, because again, we're going back to the support that each one of these kids, and as I know from what I have learned, the groups that work are groups of 2, groups of 4, groups of 6. Usually when you come to my classroom, you'll see them in groups of 4. Okay, so what we've gotten to the point where we want to make sure that all kids are in groups that they're going to feel not only safe, which is part of that shared vision, safe to fail, okay, safe to be able to take that extra step and not feel ridiculed for. Okay? And that's what's really important, that continuity comes into play, but also that sense of community comes into play, and all the things that we have done to set up that sense of community. Okay? And that was part of that shared vision.
Well, goal setting in my classroom is such an important part of what the kids do every day. Their goals are all focused around the learning targets or the behavior targets. And in my classroom, I have the learning targets set up. I wish you could see them now. And they're set up, and there's 12 learning targets on the board at all times. And there's goal sheets for each one of them. So the students get to pick what their goal for that week is. They could pick 1 or 2 different goals. And then on the goal sheet are all the different centers that students could go to help reinforce what they're learning for those goals. So for example, if the goal is I can count to 100, then on that goal sheet it says I can count to 100. The students told me why that's important, because they want to be great mathematicians, because they want to make sure that they can handle their money, and a lot of things that we do with our money has to do with 100. And so they told me the reasons why that was important. That's right on the goal sheet as well. And then underneath that are different centers, icons of different centers the kids can go to reinforce that counting to 100. So there might be the hundreds chart, read the room, use your name tag, count with a buddy. Those things are all listed, and the kids can just check off, these are the ones I'm going to do today so that I can learn to count to 100.
And I thought shared vision was the best place to start with goal setting. So we did our first class goal around one of the bullets under our shared vision. And so, and that was a great way for them to kind of then move into individual goal setting. So I think the first one was using time wisely, and we came up with 10 checkpoints during the day, and the kids would progress monitor how they were doing at each of those checkpoints. And I think our first goal was to get it, 7 out of 10 times or something like that using time wisely. And then it just, once they got in the habit of that PDCA cycle, they were really able to kind of move. We actually started, for individual goals, we started with me modeling one, and I did one on exercise. And so the first 2 weeks of school, every kid in the class chose an individual goal around health. They wanted to either eat more vegetables or jump rope more times or go to the park or ride their bike. But it completely got them in the used to that format, and so we all tracked our goals, and then it really lent itself to moving into academic goals, and now they all set individual academic goals, but it started with something they could all really wrap their hands around and understand.
Point, I can't remember what point it is. I think it's one of the first points, giving themselves the power to look at each other and address what needs to be learned, what steps they need to take, the things that sometimes we forget as teachers in the gradual release point. It's gotten to the point where now they're not only evaluating themselves and others, but they're also evaluating me, which really helps me. We went from the plus delta to the parking lot to writing at the end where they had to evaluate me on every learning target that we went through in our design, our backwards design of this class.
And it's not about him teaching us, it's about us learning more than him telling us what to do. And it's nice to know because then, you know, you can do something on your own and the teacher doesn't always have to be there.